If you're an investor in shares, you've probably been reading a great deal over the last few weeks about the mining boom being over. And that's got quite a few people concerned, I think. But I've got a message of real optimism and reality on what's going on. The negative rhetoric in the media has become really quite deafening, really quite absurd. And history will tell what happens with the mining industry in Australia, but my message is that it doesn't really matter at the moment because the outcome is always different to what people expect. And if you know where to look, there's always great opportunities to invest in shares. But what does a mining boom really mean anyway? Do we have to have booming times for things to be good? Let's just have a look at some of the facts. BHP and Rio are still spending billions of dollars in the Pilbara. Now, yes, there may be some projects that will be deferred or perhaps even cancelled, but there's a lot of money still being spent. There's $50 billion of gas projects occurring in Gladstone. The Wheatstone project in Western Australia is still looking for about 6,000 workers. And yet we have high-profile people like Minister Martin Ferguson doing us a great disservice by pointing out that, in his opinion, the mining boom is over. The pace of the mining boom was really quite unsustainable, so to expect that to have continued what we've seen in the last 5 years was really just a little bit ludicrous. So just because commodity prices aren't going to run at the peak levels that they have been doesn't mean that times aren't buoyant. You just got to look at the facts. The current commodity prices are still immensely profitable for many of the mining companies. Yes, iron ore and coal prices have come down, but they're still profitable at these levels. And it would appear as though production volumes are still probably going to continue to increase as Asia grows. You've got China and India and other parts of Asia still expanding and industrialising. So I think the best resource companies are still doing fine and they'll represent sound investments in the share market as we go forward. Just a reminder, this information is general advice only, of course. Now, let's have a look at the perception about one section of the market, and that's the resource service area. And a lot of people are saying that the resource boom is over for those service companies, and share prices have declined quite a bit over the last 6 or 8 months. And again, the perception here is that new projects will dry up and these companies will be left with no work. But let's have a look at the reality. And the 2012 annual results that we're just in the middle of at the moment are showing that quality service companies are still producing absolutely outstanding results. And so good investments still can do stunningly well in this environment. The ones that haven't done well have been slammed pretty hard, so you've still got to be selective, you've still got to do your research and choose wisely. But let's have a look at one example. That's the Decmil Group. Their code is DCG. They showed a 66% rise in profit in their recent annual report. They increased their final dividend by 67% year on year. Now, a company that was looking down the barrel of their future work drying up would hardly be increasing their final dividend by 67% in my view. They're sitting on $140 million in cash and they've got an absolutely robust order book and tender pipeline. So the future for a company like Decmil Group looks really rosy indeed, and they're making further diversifications into the oil and gas sector. Now, making money requires a repeatable plan. There's a formula for identifying the best businesses. It's a fairly straightforward formula, but it's not one that many people tend to use. And the tools that I use have stood the test of time. So for my mind, the results that we're seeing through these companies were entirely predictable. And I'm not just being wise after the event. These are investments that we made over recent months in advance. So for most investors, the difficulty lies in their execution process, and you can still get outstanding returns even in negative markets. That's the really clear message that I want to get across to you. So what do you need to grab these opportunities like Decmil and a number of others? First thing you need is a very clear game plan. You need well-researched information. You need the ability to be able to see through all the media noise and have a valid, unbiased perception of what's going on around the world. And for 99% of investors, they need some additional help with their focus and their execution of their investment plan. Now, I just want to highlight a couple of stocks and the result of this very positive earnings season that's hopefully putting an end to this question of, is the mining boom over? This is Decmil Group. They've had a 20% gain in the share price in the last 3 months, and particularly in the last couple of weeks. And as I mentioned, they're paying a 3.6% fully franked dividend, which is pretty healthy for investors. Let's have a look at the Forge Group. They've made a 20% gain in the last 4 weeks, and they're also paying a 3.6% dividend. And another company called NRW Holdings that are involved in a lot of major scale earth moving. They've gone up 11% in the last couple of weeks, and they're paying a very attractive 6.7% fully franked dividend. So certainly there are plenty of opportunities out there, and I believe there'll be opportunities every day for years and years to come. So you can make a massive impact on your future wealth and income if you know where to look and you know how to stay on track. So overall, I really want to stress, don't be conned out of making a lot of money that can be made in the future by all the media hype that's around and perhaps by your own thoughts. There's opportunities absolutely galore. You just know how to attract them. And the final question I'd leave you with is, what would it mean for you personally in terms of your financial future and your financial income in the future if you're able to consistently get your hands around these sort of opportunities? Now, to gain access to my regular free information services, you can either subscribe to my channel or you can visit our website at specialistshareeducation.com.au. Now look, I know there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and it's just so critical that you protect your family and your future by keeping your wealth building efforts on track. Despite all the negative sentiment in Australia, there are still wonderful investments available. I'm going to be sharing my research and strategies with you. There's plenty of free information and training on the site, so check in regularly and enhance your journey to personal wealth and freedom. Cheers.